Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Digital Foundry, where we're taking a look at Mario vs. Donkey Kong Reborn on Nintendo Switch. It is a late generation release of a game that originally debuted on the Game Boy Advance. And to talk about it, I brought back a special guest who I've not done a video with in quite some time, but I'm happy he's here. It's Tom Morgan.
Hello, lovely to be on board for this one, John. Yeah, I've had a little sample of the Game Boy Advance version here, and I believe you're on the Switch version.
That's right, which is exactly why we decided to do this format, because this is actually a remake of the GBA game. So we're taking this approach by we're each playing the game at the same time. And this way we can kind of stack up how the two compare. So we've just started here. First of all, look at this title screen. They perfectly nailed the similarities. Just obviously in increased fidelity. But let's go ahead and hop in. So this is a different user. So I can start a fresh new file. Let's just go to a new game.
So I'm getting a little cutscene. It's like the second cinematic. And it's got to be said that the original Game Boy Advance version had a really impressive use of voice sampling. Like it actually had some like not great bitrate, but some voice work in the opening. And it's almost used as a template, as a storyboard for what we're seeing in the Switch version on your side.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was really delighted when I first opened the game and saw these cutscenes because they perfectly realized as original still images from the GBA game, but in actual CGI.
Yeah.
Not only that, they're really well rendered.
Yeah.
And the video bitrate is super high for the Switch, which is unusual to see.
It's a genuine. I mean, the comic timing on those cutscenes is perfect.
Yeah.
I was absolutely delighted when I booted the game to see that. And
here we go.
There's Donkey Kong getting into the keyhole on my side, and then we should be matched.
So yeah, first impressions, they've done an excellent job at sort of capturing the look of this game. So let's go ahead and get that first present over here.
Our first red present, and back down we go.
So I want to talk a little bit about like sort of where this series came from for those that aren't familiar maybe, and we can maybe show it briefly on screen as well here. Mario vs. Donkey Kong for GBA, at least in my view, has always been a spiritual successor to one of my favorite Game Boy games, which is Donkey Kong 94. It's not actually called Donkey Kong 94, but it was released in 1994, so it kind of goes by that name. But it was an attempt to it was a rebirth of the Donkey Kong concept, as it were, where it's like, it actually starts by mimicking the original Donkey Kong game, but then it transforms into something else completely, which I found really, really cool at the time. And it's basically this sort of puzzle platform style experience. But the idea here is that it's a bunch of small stages that it's not single screen, but it doesn't scroll that much.
It's also kind of an interesting aesthetic for the original Game Boy Advance game, because the look of Mario is kind of like a CG pre-render.
Yeah, exactly.
In the style of, I guess Donkey Kong Country was, still in people's minds, and I don't know, I kind of like it in a weird way because it distinguishes it from the other Mario series out there.
Yeah, I think it kind of works. I guess they were still kind of into that sort of thing at the time.
Of course, the Switch version has a few differences, doesn't it? It's got a kind of as casual and classic mode for difficulty.
That's right. I did classic mode, and I think I didn't try the other one yet, actually. But it seems like you can switch at any point. And I suppose that removes things like lives.
And the timer
makes it
as well.
And the timer, which is where a lot of the challenge comes from. So I did notice one thing that's interesting is how the red blocks there on GBA, that style is kept in Switch. But the green blocks instead are more like the classic Donkey Kong girder design.
Yeah.
In this new one.
Which is a good throwback.
There we go. Get the gift.
There we go.
So I think this is a handsome Switch game and kind of highlights why I think Nintendo remains strong despite the somewhat weak hardware. So this game's not pushing any technical boundaries. Let's be clear.
No.
What it is doing is it's perfectly delivering on the intended vision. And by that, I mean, it runs at a perfect 60 frames per second at native 1080p in docked mode and native 720p in portable.
It's an odd one to kind of discuss technically. It's almost like a tech analysis of the new Super Mario Brothers games in that it's a very simple, clean look, but it has none of the movement of those games. It's very, very much fixed, static in place.
Exactly.
And it recreates all those GBA levels one-to-one. But I understand there's 6 worlds in the original Game Boy Advance game. 6 worlds comprised of several levels, several puzzles.
Right.
But there are 2 new ones in the Switch version, which are a much later game, as I understand it. So there is some extra. It's not a direct remake. There's a co-op mode as well, which is a nice thing to have.
Yeah, that's right.
So a bunch of stuff which separates it from the sort of original creation.
So it also looks really good because they're using a nice soft depth of field, like a very subtle depth of field in the background, as you can see,
right,
to sort of separate the back and foreground. And because the foreground is this crisp, it ends up looking really good. I'm also impressed with the overall loading speed.
Yeah.
It's not quite as fast as GBA, but it's close enough.
You wouldn't expect it to be, I guess, but that's perfectly fine. How do you feel about the visual style? It is more like New Super Mario Brothers than the latest Mario Wonder, isn't it? It's kind of...
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's got that side-on look for Mario. He's just running straight through the level.
Amusingly, though, for the Shy Guys, they kept the little shine in the Switch version. If you look at them,
actually looks nice, doesn't it?
Which I think they're doing to sort of emphasize the toy-like design of them. So there is no frame rate graph on this video simply because this really is an example of a game that just doesn't drop frames, unsurprisingly, perhaps.
Yeah.
Certainly not that I've seen. It's just a perfect 60 FPS across the board, as it should be.
Yeah.
And I'd imagine with the way you're capturing GBA there, the colors themselves, they always looked rather garish in GBA when played on a backlit screen versus the non-lit screen on the original GBA. I think what they're doing on Switch is probably closer to the intent.
I can't quite squeeze through that gap.
No, you gotta go. Throw the key. Throw the key.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
There you go.
Smart.
And now you just go duck down, go get it.
Perfect.
Obtain the key. Jump on it.
There we are.
There you go.
Yeah, the controls take a little bit of getting used to.
Oh, I forgot about that. So yeah, you can actually free scroll if you hold down the R. So you can kind of get a lay of the land.
Oh, I can do that as well. There you go.
Yep. So as the levels get more complex, that's very useful.
That is very useful. You know, one thing that would be really cool, hypothetically, is like a designer, like a map maker, if they went like the Mario Maker route.
The Spark.
Yep. I'm sure we mentioned this earlier, but that lack of anti-aliasing on this game is such a Nintendo move. There's just none at all.
Honestly, I'm okay with it at this resolution, especially in this age where I like TAA, but it's often abused at too low resolutions. And I actually think in this case, it lends it a nice pixely crisp look to it.
It does. And you noticed in the software licensing, something curious on the Switch version, didn't you?
It said it does, as many recent games have, it does list AMD FSR 1. But I think they might be using, based on the sharpness of it, they might be using contrast adaptive sharpening. Which
would make a lot more sense, because there's no need to use any upscale shenanigans on this game.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Oh man, look at this. So they actually have like a green tinge on this trash can. I wonder if it changes with the...
Yeah, I don't think it does. I think it stays on that left side. I noticed that as well. I think it's always on the left side. I got a bit hopeful for that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Got our hopes up.
Interesting.
Also, the shadows on the Switch version are... like they use it like a standard circle shadow underneath the enemies and everything else, but there's also overlapping that an actual more detailed shadow, so they combine the two. I don't know if this level's the best way to show it, but yeah, very strange combination. But hey, who's looking at this stuff? Like you know, we would like bother to say, hey, the shadows are doing something odd. Oh god,
exactly.
There we go.
We got them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, obviously this is a pretty light video in terms of actual DF stuff, but
yeah,
it's just a chance to kind of show it, let people see how it stacks up against this GBA original. And honestly, I have to say it is a fun little game, and it does make for a nice handheld game, and it looks especially nice, as you'd expect, on the SWOLED.
The SWOLED, yeah, it's well, it also ranks among the last few games we'll see on, while Switch is its own thing and not superseded by another console. You usually use this period to show off the best it can do, but also some titles come out kind of under the radar towards the end of a console generation, and this kind of is the latter of those, I think.
Here we go. At least there's another look. This is another part of the game where you have to sort of lead the little mini Marios around here.
That's true. And there's been a bunch of games kind of since then, since the Game Boy Advance original. There's a sequel on the Game Boy Advance as well, and
yeah, there's definitely been some sequels.
But it's like, you know, as with Advance Wars 1+2 reboot, it's almost like they just wanted to go back to the original Game Boy Advance version.
And honestly, I think that reboot specifically highlights why you can't just take for granted that these things will turn out right, because that game has major frame rate problems.
Yeah. And well,
right? It does not run well.
Yeah.
It's extremely unstable, and it does not warrant it based on the visuals.
No, not at all. But you know, despite that, it still plays really well.
It does. Unfortunately, that's been kind of true since WayForward made the switch to Unity. Their Switch projects have generally suffered. Oh, I should have led all the Marios into that, but I got the chest to it.
Okay, let's see Donkey Kong get angry about this.
It is pretty wild to see, though, that this version of Donkey Kong has persisted for so long. The Kevin Bayliss design, he really nailed it back in the day. And when we learned that it was literally just a coconut, it was a Battletoad head with a coconut on top or whatever.
A what with a coconut on his head?
Yeah, when I did the Donkey Kong episode, I asked him about that, and he said that Donkey Kong's design was basically a Battletoad with a coconut on his head,
now
turned upside down.
I see it, and that's ruined Donkey Kong forever for me.
Sorry, that's the reality.
Wow.
I love that win message. Let's see if it says "Great, you won" on Switch as well.
Great, you won.
Great, you won.
Okay.
Battlode. That's how they say it in the UK, isn't it? Battlode. Or do you actually say the no,
what word is that? Battlode?
Battletoad.
Battletoad.
Battlode.
Battletoad.
Battletoad.
Battletoad. If you want to say it that way, or Battletoad.
Battletoad.
I think the Game Boy Advance, if we're doing a face-off here, the Game Boy Advance has won here. You know, it's got great you won, as opposed to...
Yeah, this just says congratulations.
How soulless.
It is soulless. I miss that stuff, you know? But there we go. You get a more elaborate animation here on going to the next world, though, you have to admit.
Yeah, that's much better. I was actually hoping that we'd get more CG cutscenes in the Switch version. Maybe they'll come out later in the game, because that initial one is just so incredible. Almost like something plucked from the Mario movie.
Yeah, they've done this is a really slick UI. Like, also, the evolution of the UI stuff here is great. I really think it looks beautiful.
UI feels like classic Nintendo, New Super Mario Brothers, or Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has those beautiful character art and slick menu transitions. Also, props to the soundtrack, which is really beautifully composed and has a really great jazzy, upbeat feel to it. I'm sure you'll hear it in the edit.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. And this one's interesting, actually, when you compare the two here, because the visual design is very different this time. Like, it has the more abstract design on GBA there, where Switch, they're going for a more, I guess, realistic. Not realistic, but it's a different style, as you can see. But there's more animated stuff going on with the waterfalls in the background, but you got those cool leaves at the bottom on GBA. So yeah, overall, I feel like they compare rather favorably, but I think they've done a good job with the Switch version. And it's up to Nintendo's usual standards for this stuff. But I think that's going to do it for this video. So thanks for joining me here, Tom.
Absolutely. Any time for this sort of a double header.
Indeed. And hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing these differences and appreciate it. Do you like Mario versus Donkey Kong? Or would you rather see Mario versus something else? I don't know. We have Mario versus Sonic in the Olympics, I think, that's happened.
We've had that, yeah.
But I kind of prefer this over the Olympics games, if I'm honest. But, you know, it's all good.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to let us know, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.